I met with my girlfriend's work husband. Without her knowledge, it turned out that he did not know about my existence and met with her for more than a month. Rachel, 25F, and I, 26M, had been together for 2 years. When we first started dating, it felt like we were the perfect match. We bonded over our shared love for music, hiking, and late-night road trips. She loved to plan for the future, always talking about how we'd travel to far-off places, build a home together, and maybe even adopt a dog or two. It wasn't just talk. She introduced me to her family early on, and we had an annual tradition of camping with her cousins each summer. It wasn't always perfect. We had our share of arguments, mostly about small things like whose turn it was to cook, or why she couldn't stop leaving her clothes on the couch. But we never fought about big things, at least, not until everything fell apart. I thought I knew her. I thought I could trust her. When she got a new job about a year ago, I was genuinely happy for her. She had been stuck in a dead-end role for too long, and this new position came with better pay and a more creative environment. I cheered her on as she adjusted to her new office life, even when it meant more late nights at work and fewer evenings together. In hindsight, I should have noticed the cracks forming. Her texts during the day became less frequent. Calls that used to end with, "I love you," turned into rushed goodbyes. I chalked it up to stress, her needing time to settle into a demanding new role. I told myself not to overthink it, not to read too much into her growing distance. After all, I trusted her, or at least I thought I did. About 3 months into her new job, my girlfriend started talking about a coworker. Let's call him Mark. At first, her mentions of him seemed harmless. She'd laugh about something he said during a meeting or casually mention how they worked well together on a project. "Mark's brilliant at what he does," she said one night, and I nodded along, not giving it much thought. But as the weeks went by, Mark started coming up more often, too often. She'd gush about how funny or insightful he was and talk about the jokes they shared. Once, she slipped in a comment that stuck with me. "Mark and I are always on the same page." I told myself I was overthinking things. Everyone needs work friends, right? Still, it was hard to ignore how much space Mark was starting to occupy in our conversations. Then, one evening, she mentioned something that made my stomach turn. "Some of the guys at work keep teasing Mark and me," she said, grinning. "They call us the office couple." I tried to keep my tone light, but I couldn't help asking, "And you're okay with that?" "Why wouldn't I be?" she replied, sounding genuinely puzzled. "Because you're not single," I said flatly. Her expression shifted, and for the first time, there was a flicker of defensiveness in her tone. "It's just a joke. You're reading too much into it." Her reaction didn't sit right with me. Over the next few weeks, I noticed her becoming more evasive. She'd go out more often, claiming it was for girls' nights or work dinners. When I asked her about her plans, her answers were vague. The doubts gnawed at me until I finally decided to take action. I didn't want to accuse her without proof, but I needed answers. That's when I had the idea to reach out to Mark directly. I tracked him down through his social media profile, and with a nervous breath, I sent him a message. "Hi, Mark. My name's Holpeck. I'm a friend of Rachel's. I was hoping we could meet up sometime, just a quick chat. Maybe a drink? Let me know." To my surprise, he agreed. We arranged to meet at a bar near his office. I didn't tell Rachel. She had no idea this meeting was happening, and I felt a knot in my stomach as I walked into the dimly lit bar that night. Mark was already there, sitting at a small table with a beer in hand. When I introduced myself, he looked curious but not alarmed. "So, how do you know Rachel?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. I didn't waste time. "I'm her boyfriend," I said, watching his face closely. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Mark froze, his brow furrowing as he processed what I just said. "Boyfriend?" he repeated, his voice laced with confusion. "Yes," I said firmly. "We've been together for 2 years." Mark's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to something darker, realization. "Wait," he said slowly. "Rachel told me she was single." Mark's face froze when I said the words. "I'm Rachel's boyfriend." "Boyfriend?" he repeated, his voice sharp with disbelief. "Yes," I said firmly, my heart pounding. "We've been together for 2 years." His reaction said it all. Mark leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply as he processed the information. She told me she was single, he muttered, his tone almost bitter. I nodded slowly, already expecting his answer. How long have you two been seeing each other? About a month, he admitted, shaking his head. I can't believe this. She made it seem like there was nothing holding her back. No boyfriend, no complications, nothing. His words hit like a sledgehammer, but the truth was undeniable. Rachel hadn't just been unfaithful, she'd led a completely separate life with Mark, erasing me from the picture entirely. Mark rubbed his temples, his frustration bubbling over. Look, I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. If I had, it's not your fault. I cut in, my voice sharper than intended. She lied to both of us. I'm not here to blame you. He nodded, his jaw tight. So what now? I stood, the decision already clear in my mind. Now I deal with Rachel. There wasn't much left to say. We exchanged an awkward nod before I walked out of the bar, my mind racing. Rachel and I needed to have a conversation, a real one. When I got home, Rachel was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. Seeing her so calm after everything I just learned made my blood boil. I dropped my keys on the counter, the sound startling her. Oh, hey, she said with a smile, looking up. You're home early. Yeah, I replied, my voice flat. We need to talk. Her smile faltered. What's wrong? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I met Mark. The color drained from her face. Mark? She repeated, trying to feign ignorance. Yes, Mark. Your coworker. The one you've been seeing behind my back. I said, my voice rising. He didn't know you had a boyfriend, by the way. Did you ever think to mention that to him? Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I'll save you the trouble of coming up with an excuse, I said, cutting her off. He told me everything. How long it's been going on. How you told him you were single. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to hear that from him? Rachel stood up, her hands trembling. Wait, it's not what you think, don't. I snapped, my voice hard. Don't insult me by lying again. I gave you 2 years of my life, Rachel. 2 years. And this is how you repay me? Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, her voice cracking. It got out of hand. Out of hand? I repeated, my anger flaring. This wasn't some accident. You lied to me. You lied to him. You made a conscious choice to betray me. She sank back onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sorry? I laughed bitterly. You're only sorry because you got caught. For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of her muffled sobs. I stood there, watching the person I thought I knew crumble in front of me. I can't do this anymore, Rachel, I said finally, my voice steady. We're done. She looked up, panic flashing across her face. Wait, please. Don't do this. We can work through this. I'll stop seeing him, I swear. No, I said firmly. This isn't something you come back from. You made your choice. Her tears fell freely now, but I felt no sympathy. I turned and headed to the bedroom to pack some things, leaving her sitting there with the weight of her actions. I stayed at a friend's place that night. The drive there was a blur, my thoughts swirling as I replayed every moment of the confrontation. 2 years of memories, vacations, late-night talks, inside jokes, felt like they'd been incinerated in a single evening. Rachel called me once, then again, and then started texting. I didn't respond. Her messages ranged from apologies to pleas for a second chance, to promises she'd cut Mark out of her life entirely. But I knew better. You don't come back from something like this. The next morning, I returned to our apartment to gather more of my things. She was still there, sitting on the couch, looking as though she hadn't slept. You're really leaving? She asked, her voice hoarse. Yes, I said firmly. I don't have anything else to say. I know I messed up, she said, her voice cracking. But it was a mistake. Can't we just fix this? I stopped packing for a moment and looked at her. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice, Rachel. Over and over again, you chose to lie to me, to betray me. What do you expect me to do with that? She didn't respond, and I finished packing in silence. Over the next few days, I moved in with a friend while I looked for my own place. I reached out to my family and close friends, filling them in on what had happened. Their support was overwhelming. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I had it. Rachel, meanwhile, didn't stop trying to contact me. She sent long messages about how she missed me, how she realized she'd ruined everything, and how she couldn't imagine her life without me. I read the first few, but they all felt hollow. If she had valued me, she wouldn't have thrown everything away for someone else. Then one evening, I got a call from Mark. I just wanted to check in, he said awkwardly. Are you okay? It was strange, but I appreciated the gesture. We talked for a while, mostly commiserating about how blindsided we both felt. He told me he'd cut all ties with Rachel, saying he wanted nothing to do with someone who could lie so easily. That makes two of us. I said by the end of the week, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief. It hurt to leave a relationship I thought had a future, but it was better than staying in one built on lies. The first few weeks after the breakup felt like walking through a fog. I threw myself into work during the day and leaned on friends in the evenings. They invited me out, kept me distracted, and listened when the anger or sadness bubbled up. The apartment hunt gave me a sense of purpose. It felt good to focus on something tangible, something that signaled a fresh start. Within a month, I found a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, a one-bedroom that was mine and mine alone. Rachel didn't stop reaching out immediately. For weeks, she sent messages apologizing, asking for another chance, or blaming the situation on the pressures of her new job. I ignored every single one. I had nothing left to say. Eventually, the calls and texts stopped. I heard through a mutual friend that she left the job where she'd met Mark and had been keeping a low profile. I felt no satisfaction in hearing that, just relief that the chapter was finally closing. As the weeks turned into months, I started feeling like myself again. The hurt didn't disappear overnight, but it dulled with time. I learned to enjoy my own company, rediscovering hobbies I'd let slip during the relationship. One night, I found myself at a bar with friends. It was the same kind of place where I'd confronted Mark months earlier, but this time, there was no tension, no hidden agenda. Just laughter, clinking glasses, and the feeling of moving forward. As I sat there, I realized something. I didn't miss Rachel. The version of her I thought I loved didn't exist. What I missed was the idea of her, the future we'd imagined together. But that future wasn't real, and it never had been. The person I was becoming now didn't need her. It's been 6 months since that night at the bar, and my life looks completely different now. The initial sting of betrayal has faded, replaced by a quiet sense of clarity. I've come to realize that Rachel's actions said far more about her than they ever did about me. I've settled into my new place, building a routine that feels like my own. I've started focusing on my goals again, taking on extra projects at work, traveling on weekends, and reconnecting with the people who truly matter in my life. Mark and I haven't spoken since our last conversation, and I'm fine with that. We were two people blindsided by the same lie, and I respect the way he handled the situation, but we don't need to stay connected. As for Rachel, she's no longer a part of my world. I don't know what she's doing now, and I don't care to find out. I've let go of the anger and hurt because holding on to it would only keep me tied to her in a way I no longer want to be. Sometimes, late at night, I reflect on everything that happened. It's hard not to wonder if I missed warning signs earlier or if there was something I could have done differently. But I remind myself that no amount of effort or love can change someone who's not willing to be honest. This experience taught me something important. I deserve better. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and a partner who values me as much as I value them. And while it'll take time to fully open my heart again, I'm no longer afraid of what the future holds. For now, I'm just taking it one step at a time, rebuilding a life I can be proud of, and that's more than enough.